That's James's leftover salad from the Waterton junk food picnic, and here's a banana grape smoothie and a shortbread cookie. I'm having a smoothie myself. Fourth Estate, and this is not a movie. James is going to be talking politics today. So let's see if I can get this set up here. Well, I think that's good. I think that's just fine. So this is my outfit today. My twirl. Put my hat on. And if I'm still feeling too warm, then I have a shirt there I can wear. But I think I'll be just fine in this. So what are you going to say about those shirts?
Hi, Fourth Estate. There's four episodes, I think. 2 discs, but we're on the 1.5 estate or something like that. Oh my God. It's so you folks at home. What do you think the life, the work life, the career of a newspaper reporter is like? Just chock full of thrills, or do you think it's about as boring as they are? You're right. I'm not even going to tell you what the right answer is because you know. So they're basically following Trump's, what should have been his demise. People were trying to get investigation going on Russian interference in 2016. They should have been looking at Russian interference in the Snowden affair in Julian Assange. I can't even remember his name. I can't even remember to forget it. The WikiLeaks thing. It's all Russia. I knew there was something weird when Snowden came out. Going, yeah, this is. Left-wingers are all going nuts. Wow, this is awesome. Yeah, it's undermining Obama. What's that about? It was, I got a creepy feeling off it. There was just something wrong right away. And of course that Assange idiot, I don't know where he hangs on the political spectrum. He sounds right-wing to me. Is he a right-wing libertarian? It doesn't matter if he's left-wing. When you're talking about libertarian anarchism, they don't believe in having a ruler outside of them. They decide the rules. And so if they want to kill a leader or a misleader or whatever, they will do it. And they've done it before. So all you left-wingers are going, yeah, anarchism, just awesome. Wow, that A in a circle that looks like it was some sort of really bad graffiti. Well, there's that too. But you guys are so out to lunch. It's unbelievable. You guys really don't believe in democracy. You just believe in you being king, you deciding whatever. Even Marx, who was pretty benighted, said this to say about capitalism. It's economic anarchy. Got that? We've always had anarchy. We've always had it. Some places more than others. It's basically warlordism. So, generally dynasties last 100 years, maybe 200 years if they're really successful. And then anarchy sets in, and then some other warlord comes in. It's anarchy is just the way of the world. If there isn't something like democracy. So anarchy is the opposite of democracy. Have you got that? Yeah, I think you anarchists understand it, because I hear you complaining about how democracy doesn't work. Yeah, one of the best ways it works is trying to keep you idiots out of power. Anyway, back to the Fourth Estate. It's just hopeless watching these folks. It's something like 2017. Well, it's even, 140 days. It's still 2016. I think the thing was put out in 2018, maybe. There's a lot of stuff put out 2018. I think Jerry Tubin, whatever his name is, used to be a CNN talking head. Maybe still is. I don't know. He put out something 2018. I think what was his name? Frump? No. Yeah, David Frump. Oh, Frump. He used to be a speechwriter for George Bush Jr., Bush Baby Jr., Bush Baby, I call him. Oh, that's kind of redundancy, Baby and Jr. But he put something out, like he seemed to think, the back of the front of the book had the back of Donald Trump. And it seemed to suggest Trump was over and finished. And we survived I think it was 2 impeachment votes, that sort of stuff. I don't know what the Republicans were thinking. Yeah, of course it would divide the Republican Party. You'd be out of power for a while. They really don't believe. They're that greedy, short-sighted. They prefer to see the United States under the control of Putin than they would under the Democrats. Hopeless. You guys are hopeless. David Frump, you pointed out that Donald Trump was not 2018. He's been doing stuff since then, criticizing Trump. And it's amazing to read his book 2018 talking about how great the Republicans were under George Bush Jr. What? You guys had the thing that allowed Trump to do a hostile takeover of the Republican Party and almost allowed Bernie Sanders to do a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. And in either of those cases, if Bernie Sanders had been elected, Donald Trump got elected, they were both Russian agents. And you stupid scumbugs who allowed George Bush Jr. to allow Dick Cheney to make all these stupid decisions that resulted in the stock market crash and result in Great Recession, as they call it. You are the guys that are more than anything else responsible for the rise of these extremists. Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, stuff like that. Similar thing happened in the 30s. Again, it was the Republican Party, kind of the newly minted right-wing party. They used to be the left-wing party, and then they switched over around 2012. Started switching over. It's gotten more and more extreme. Huge stock market crash, huge economic fallout. 29 into the beginning of 1933, and the result was huge. People just moved away from the capitalist, and I don't really care much about that, but the democratic, the status quo, and they moved to the right and the left, and the rest was history. And what was the history? Yeah, World War II, you stupid chimp, David Frump. So it's kind of sad watching these folks. It's like watching prehistoric insect get stuck in sap, and you guys, it's like I can see the amber that you're in right now, you guys just prehistoric crawling insects, you stupid weaklings. You look at these folks on camera, they're preening for the camera. You guys are aggressive propagandists. They're way worse, of course. There's CNN, no, not CNN, Fox Network. CNN's, I don't know, I consider it kind of like right wing. I mean, it was set up by Ted Turner, for Pete's sake. But it's kind of like center. I don't know. It's incredible. Scumbag right-wingers I'll see even on CNN. I see scumbag left-wingers on that too. On Fox, it's just scumbag right-wingers, and then they will pick their favorite left-wing loser, i.e. Bernie Sanders, and praise him to the skies, hoping he gets nominated so he can be crushed. Like he would have been in 2016. So the Fourth Estate, don't bother, folks. I'm going to bother because I put myself through this. I get into other people's echo chambers, plural. I get into this echo chamber, that echo chamber. I'm going, wow, but I'm proof to it all. And because what I do is I go with the stats. So when it comes to handling the economy, the stats indicate the Democratic Party historically has been far better. It's 10-1, folks. 10-1 since 1947. 10-1, the Republicans have fumbled the economy, have had a recession when they've been in power. when they've had the president in power. And they had the elected president. It's not even close. When it comes to foreign policy, that's not important as far as I'm concerned. But there's been some extreme cases of funvalitis with both Republican Party and Democratic Party. The worst cases of funvalitis have been for the Democratic Party, Jimmy Carter with Iran, and Obama in Iraq, surrendering there. Biden didn't do a very good job in Afghanistan either, but Afghanistan's not very important to this world. Just got to make sure that they understand they're in Afghanistan. Whoever's in power there, Taliban, whoever, you'd better mess up your own backyard. You know, the saying is clean up your own backyard. When you got people like the Taliban, they just mess up their own backyard. So go ahead, poop in your own backyard. But when you start pooping in other people's backyards or front yards, as in the case of 9/11, and understand the Taliban and Al-Qaeda were like this. You see that? My fingers are actually touching, okay?
So I got James talking about Trump today. It really wasn't that. It was gas prices. Just driving by, I'm like, oh, gas prices went down. And then James is like, well, like it's summer and people aren't having to heat their homes in Europe right now. And then Trump's midterm elections will be coming up in November. And Putin doesn't want, he wants Trump to keep staying and doing what he's doing.
Well,
and then in November, after the midterm elections, then our gas prices are going to skyrocket.
Maybe.
Because
we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with Iran. I think they'll go with a truce right now and then wait until after November. And I'm kind of surprised they went with it when they did, with trying to bring Iraq or Iran to book. I understand it had to get done. You cannot afford to let Muslim fundamentalists to get control of any sort of a bomb, much less the possibility of a hydrogen bomb, even an atomic bomb. You cannot afford to let them do that because they don't care. Fundamentalists don't care whether they die or not, because according to their own view, they're going to heaven if they die in defense of Islam. And so their big sound chomp over the centuries, check it out, has been to any of their opponents, not just capitalists, it's not recent. It's we love death as much as you guys love life. So, you folks who think, oh, it doesn't really, and I've had a university instructor who had a PhD and had been to Harvard, it wasn't a PhD from Harvard, say, like who's to say who should have the atomic bomb and nuclear weapons and stuff like that? Well, that's pretty easy breezy. You know, like I didn't have a chance because I was so aghast to say, would you have allowed Hitler to have atomic weapons, much less nuclear weapons? Huh? Would you? And of course the answer, no. Yeah. So the fundamentalists in Iran are as bad as Hitler. They're as bad as Hitler. And maybe worse, because you could always get some sort of sense in Germany. You know, if Hitler had nuclear weapons, well, okay, you can start a nuclear war and we'll wipe you off the map. It'd be that way with North Korea. You can because they're secular, you can kind of say that to them, but you can't say that to Iran or any fundamentalist Muslim power. They get nuclear weapons, they will only too happily use them to blackmail. You know, if they get hydrogen weapons enough, nuclear weapons enough to start a nuclear war, like, you know, like if the United States gets bombed, or Russia gets bombed, or China gets bombed with nuclear weapons, and no one claims, like Al-Qaeda, no one claims credit for it, all the weapons they get launched. They're not waiting around to see if they get wiped out. Hugely destabilizing. So you can't have folks like this saying, okay, whole world now, we've got hydrogen bombs, we've got nuclear bombs, whatever you want to call them, and convert or else. because that's the way they've traditionally converted. Convert or die. Now, be skeptical about what I'm saying. Don't be cynical. Because cynicism invites people to say, well, I know better, and I don't have to do my homework. Don't try that trick on me. Check out what I say. And don't read your little echo chambers on what Islam is about, or what communism is about, frankly, or what Nazism is about. Understand, Nazism was a socialist system. It was a national socialist system. That's what they called it. And the commies in Russia, they called themselves internationalists. In many ways, that made them almost more virulent, because they're saying, hey, we're going to spread the gospel, truth, to the whole world. And the whole world better knuckle under while they're being sent off to work camps, or really work to death camps. And the weird thing is, the guy who really got that going, well, the first guy who got it going was a guy called Lenin. Not John Lennon, thank heavens, John Winston. Or as he later styled himself, John Bono Lennon. It was Lenin, and he was part, I think it was Komi, people related to the Laplanders, maybe half. And half, they say German, but I've run across one source that said that was German Jew. But at any rate, not ethnic Russian. And I think it was just German. I'll have to check it up and see. And Lenin was, I think, not half and half. He was just 50 proof, is that 100%? 50 proof Georgian. He was a Russian chauvinist. Check that out. I understand, a lot of people think that's just chauvinist is something used by feminists, but they picked it up from a guy called Chauvin. And he was just I gather, a French nationalist or something like that. Definitely a French last name. I think it means it's a version of Calvin, which, what does that mean? It means bald. So one of his ancestors was bald. What do they call bats? Souris, chauve, bald. Mice. Could be wrong. Anyway, check it out. Be skeptical about what I say. You can try to be cynical, but if I find out, your ears are going to be burning. Not because I'll be giving you a slap on the ear or anything like that, but I'm going to be running the mouth on you. Okay, what's it say? 5, 10?
You have 11 minutes to talk about
Okay.
This Is Not a Movie.
Okay, so
you still
I want to get this over and done with.
haven't
Whoa,
explained
smokes, this one's cooked. Okay. My absolute disgust and hatred for this. Anyway, yeah, that's right. I was going to do that. I got started.
Yes, you did.
So here's the Mediterranean. And I was going this way. When I did the analysis, I went this way. How were the terrorists getting terrorists into Syria? The part of Syria where they were at, which is landlocked. Because the people in power in Syria were on the Mediterranean. Alawites, and they controlled Latakia and another place where there were actual Russian, I almost called them Soviet bases, but Russian bases. One in Latakia, I think, was a naval base, and the one inland, I've forgotten what the place was maybe Air Force Base or something like that, Air Force Army, not sure. Anyway, they had control of the, what do they call it, Mediterranean littoral. Anyway, right there. So ISIS was landlocked. How'd they get their terrorists in? And as it turns out, they're armed. Well, like I started with Lebanon. Well, Lebanon was controlled by Iran, a Shiite power, and ISIS was very much fundamentalist Sunni. These guys have been at their throats, Sunnis and Shiites, since before 700 BC, as I recall. Been around, no, I'm not that old, okay? So, Lebanon, nope, doesn't work out. There's some Sunnis there's some Christians there, but it was, and still is to a large extent, controlled by the Shia, okay? They're kind of hopefully losing control now that Syria has been lost to the Shia, okay? It's majority Sunni. The Shia, the Ba'athist party that was in power was supported by a minority of the population. Okay? Then you go to Israel. Oh, well, maybe Israel was sliding terrorists into Syria. And I'm sure there's a lot of idiots who are going around saying Israel was behind 9/11. Who might be thinking that, well, you know, behind ISIS, and they're doing all sorts of terrorism, makes Islam look bad, all that sort of stuff. So maybe I shouldn't even mention that possibility, because if it hasn't occurred to some of these stunted intellects, now it will. Okay, Egypt doesn't border on Syria. Oh, we got Saudi Arabia, and it does. I think it's called Anbar province, or is that? No, it's Anbar province, I think, of Iraq. But it does have a border with it. And the reports I heard, I almost believe them like gospel truth, is the Saudis were sending armies there to control that border once ISIS took over in Syria. Why is that? They didn't want them coming in and having the Saudi royal family lose their heads, because that's what would have happened. Now, there might have been all sorts of rich Saudis who, on the sly, were sending arms to ISIS. That's a possibility. And there might have been some people in the Gulf states, the Gulf states don't border on Syria, who are sending stuff through Saudi Arabia, but not Saudi royal family. I'm not making it out. They got rid of, they didn't kill him, but they exiled Osama bin Laden, who was, his dad had worked for the Saudis, I think as something like an engineer, civil engineering, civil engineer. First they sent him to the Sudan. I think pressure was brought on Sudan, and about the only other place that would take him was the outhouse called Afghanistan. What belongs in that outhouse? I'm not going to tell you. But yeah, they took him, and then they were like this, right? Taliban in control in Afghanistan and Osama. So there we go. Now Iraq, we're moving counterclockwise from your guys' point of view, and now we're into Iraq. Well, back then, 2011 and stuff like that, Iraq was under the, it was majority Shia, maybe 60%, and under the control of the Shiites in neighboring Iran. Okay? Or not okay. You don't like that? Check it out. So, well, folks, we run into Kurdish territory. Even in the northern part of Iraq, and then into the eastern part of Turkey, bordering on the Shia, on the area controlled by ISIS. Fascinating. Well, they actually were fighting ISIS. So maybe they were sending arms to ISIS just to keep the old pot boiling, eh? No. Eh? No. Well, that's the eastern part of Turkey. We've gone from the area along the Mediterranean, right here in the northeast corner, controlled by Syria, just south of a place called Turkey. And we've gone all the way around the clock to the Kurdish area, semi-controlled, of eastern Turkey. What's left? Oh, I did it the other way around. What is that? Clockwise? It was way back when. 2012. I think 2011. Maybe a little early. 2012. I said, how are the terrorists getting the arms here? So, I could say anything. But I knew a guy who did archaeology in this province or state, I think it's called a province, of Turkey, right here, on the northeastern corner of the Mediterranean, Hatay province. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it anything like correctly, but there you go. You can look it up. Get out the old atlas. Blow off the dust, brush it off, do whatever, open it up and start doing a little bit of work, okay? You who are skeptical. I was doing some work, probably within walking distance of the border with Syria. So I just said to him, I didn't do any of this analysis. I said, geographic analysis. How are the terrorists bringing terrorists in? And he said, they're pouring in through the Hatay province. I didn't say it like that, but that's how I interpret it. Because I did it by analysis. I didn't have my stupid little fancy Gucci shoes on the ground like this idiot. Or maybe he's got army boots. I don't know what he's got when he's hanging with the Syrian army, former Syrian army. And he's going around saying, "Oh, it's the Saudis." He found an arms dealer. He found a signature, and he'd done some dealing with the Saudis. A lot of it, maybe number one on his list. But you know, he's so stupid. He let it slip because he actually believes this. But at the end, this arms dealer, or someone who's dealing with the arms dealer, said, "Well, it's sent to the Saudis. The Bulgarians. There's one. Oh, Turkey." And, you know, I was just waiting for the army boot to drop. There you go. So all this stuff, he's boots on the ground. I don't care. Here's what George Bernard Shaw said about people like this. He said, you know, the stones of St. Peter's Square, or whatever it's called, in the Vatican City, have been there for hundreds of years, and they know nothing about art. This guy's like a rock, and it's not just in his head. He's wherever it's at, and he can't figure things out. He's as stupid as a pet rock. If you want him to be your pet rock, you go ahead, but he's not going to be mine. I don't have pet rocks.
You have 2 minutes to wrap it up.
Okay, well, I think I basically have.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know. I'm kind of hungry, and
Oh,
I
sorry.
kind of built up an appetite.
I guess
I
you
burned up
did.
a few calories there. I got
Yeah.
hot under the collar. I'm not apologizing, folks. You know, there is a time to get emotional. It's once you've made an unemotional assessment of what's actually happening, and then you get mad at bad people, like that Robert Fisk. Thanks a lot.